This is Patriots Playbook.
The legend.
Be nice to Faith when you call in on the show today.
Or else.
Yes.
I've seen this team lose in so many spots where I felt like they were going to pull it out.
Kiss of death.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand how that's even professional caliber football being played when you know you're in an obvious situation and your quarterback is going to be in the end zone and you still whiff on the play.
So I agree with you finally.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like I've been right out along, but nobody pays any attention.
So, continuing to just do the same thing is the definition of insanity.
Yes,
at this
thank
point.
you. And that's my point, is that what we're embarking upon now is sheer insanity.
Now, here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook.
But we like insanity. We live by insanity.
Hey, they got the ball first and they won.
Thank you.
They didn't. It
Thank
wasn't
you.
because they elected to get the ball first. But
I understand that, but sometimes you need to be hit up the side of the head with an idiot stick to realize it, right?
Hey, it worked.
That's all I'm saying.
They
It
won the game.
Just a change up,
Yeah.
a slider, a curve.
It did help that they,
a
actually
knuckler.
had a good opening script to
Yes.
go down the field and
Stop
take a field
throwing
goal.
fastballs down the middle, okay? And maybe they won't get tattooed out of the park. I have to use that, baseball because my Texas Rangers are in the World Series. now.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well, I've really been more of a Red Sox fan.
Good.
For pretty much the last 40 years. But I grew up a Rangers fan because they came to Arlington
Yeah.
from Washington when they were the Senators when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I was 13 years old when they arrived in town. So, yeah, how could you not be a Major League Baseball fan, of a team that absolutely stunk? I mean, they lost like 110 games or something the first year. It was unbelievable. So I'm kind of happy. And now that they're playing the Diamondbacks, because I know there's a lot of people that like the Phillies around, at least up in the Northeast anyway. And I thought the Phillies were the best team start to finish in the NL anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys can talk Bruins. I can talk baseball. What
That's
the hell,
fine.
right? But, I mean.
Well, yeah, me and Deuce here, two
Understood.
Bruins people.
Understood.
Paul,
Understood.
too.
It's all right. It's all right. I watched a little of that game last night too, I thought the Phillies were the best team. So the Diamondbacks are in. I don't think it's a shoe-in, but I actually like the Rangers' chances a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because they're
there's a
literally
lot of-
mashing it right now.
There's a lot of Red Sox ties with the Diamondbacks. Their manager and their GM are both Red Sox people.
I'll take it.
So I'm sure a lot of people in Boston that
Probably,
care.
yeah, that would root for the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally
Yeah.
understand that. Coming into the stadium today, what did they do to the parking? In the lot, nearest, where we go in. Why did they put those concrete barriers in there and then rope off? It looks like a frickin' maze.
I don't know.
What is the deal?
I don't know. There's always something going on here.
They finally find a job they could give to Malik Cunningham?
That was mean.
I'm just...
Poor Malik.
Well, I'm just-
Man.
No,
The
I'm
top rope.
I thought maybe they were going to try to keep him around. So like, let's give him a
Yeah.
parking job because no one else can do it right.
The part,
You can hear Marine laugh on the other side of the glass in the other room
you
on
don't,
that one.
You don't get... Marine doesn't laugh like that at us too often. He usually, our dumb jokes don't usually
No, they don't.
get
They
the
don't
Marine.
resonate. No,
No.
that one resonated with I
Yeah.
think Marine anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
I felt bad. I really felt bad. But I mean, so why? Why did they do it? Why did they decide to waive him after all the talk and especially after the re-up of the contract? And I guess they have on pretty good authority he's going to make it through waivers here.
I mean, I guess. I don't know. Look, I've never been, and it's not anything against Malik Cunningham, but I've never been like a big believer in Malik Cunningham. I've always thought, first of all, and people that have listened since the spring will know this, him as a receiver, I have absolutely zero interest in. Zero. Like, the guy, from everything that we have seen as a receiver, cannot play receiver at this level. He just can't. All right, I'm
Going
not
to take a little bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
As developing him as a dual threat quarterback, that's more interesting to me. But it still, to me, is too far away to the point where he's a practice squad guy and he's developing on the practice squad. He had really the one good drive against Houston in the fourth quarter of the preseason game in the opener, which if you pulled up the 11 guys that were on the field for the Texans and the Patriots, you might find one or two that are on an NFL roster right now. And people made it out to be that this was the next coming. Like, this was this big thing, and I get it. He's an exciting young player with the ball in his hands, and they don't have a mobile quarterback, so it's a little bit of like grass is greener on the other side for people. I get it, but I've never really believed in Malik Cunningham being anything of substantial value to the Patriots, and frankly, I was pretty surprised that they even put him on the 53-man roster. I think Bill O'Brien was a little surprised based off of his comments.
I think they were just intrigued, at least by my impression, just intrigued by his sort of dual threat capability, and that maybe he could also play somehow on the special teams, and and to keep a guy that might be able to, with one person, fill 2 or 3 different roster spots was a good thing. Yeah. As it turns out, it's going to take a little more than that in order to be able to secure a spot.
And then I think when he played against the Raiders, and I don't want to like hold it too much against him because it was only 6 snaps, and how much can you really garner off of 6 snaps and 2 at quarterback? But the 2 at quarterback, both read option design elements that they have with him in that Raiders game were an abject disaster. I mean, they lost 5 yards on one play, and I think it was like a 1 yard handoff on the other play. Like they went almost backwards on both plays. So I don't really think it, in a very, very small sample size, admittedly, it didn't really work against the Raiders. And Belichick after the game was not really too into it. Like, he was asked about Malik Cunningham and what went into the decision to sign him to the 53 and make him active on game day, and he said we had a lot of injuries. I think speaking at wide receiver mainly, with guys like Juju and Pop Douglas and these guys being out. So now they're getting a little bit healthier at receiver, and Jalen Reagor, I think, is a guy that plays a little bit more natural receiver that can contribute immediately instead of having to break him in like Malik. It's a long shot.
I hope that they're able. My own personal thing here is I hope they're able to keep him and move him onto the practice squad and let him continue to try to develop. That's the best thing.
I've always said it, and it's. They need to develop him at quarterback. He's not a wide receiver.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
So, but that just kind of falls in line, Evan, to some of the other wild and woolly things we've seen, from the coaching staff philosophy over the last few years here.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we going to try to make him something he's not?
Yeah. Like, I would have been far more interested in the Malik Cunningham story in training camp, because the people that listen to us in camp know that I was like, this is a ridiculous experiment that's not going to work. I would have been so much more interested in talking about Malik Cunningham in August if he was training at quarterback, right? And they were developing him and we saw him every day in camp at quarterback.
I would love to have seen him have a legit shot to supplant Bailey Zappi.
Yeah. Yeah, but they didn't, and that's the bottom line, is that by experimenting with him at wide receiver, they never gave him a shot to develop at quarterback. So it didn't really give him a great chance. Like, I thought it was kind of a disservice to him after he had a pretty good career at Louisville at quarterback to just be like, we're going to make you into a receiver. We're not really going to give you an opportunity to make the team as a QB, and here we are.
Yeah. All right. So, at any rate, that was part of the news this week. I guess the other there are a couple of other major stories, I guess. Semi-major stories. Let's see. 1, New England won a football game. 2, Bill Belichick says he ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Just a typical day of the office.
Yeah. The contract thing, I guess we haven't really talked too much about it.
No, we haven't.
But I would fall mainly into the camp of, I don't really necessarily look at the years or the length of the contract as like tying him to the Patriots for that amount of time, because we see it all the time. Whichever direction it is, whether it's the coach deciding to leave or the team firing the coach, that contracts get ripped up at the coach level all the time. They get at the player level too, but specifically with coaches, I don't know how much contracts necessarily matter. Now, does it matter to the point where, okay, if it's a lot of money, then maybe you don't want to buy him out? And I guess. But at the end of the day, if Bill Belichick's on the chopping block because of performance reasons, because of football reasons, I don't think that a contract extension is going to prohibit the Crafts from firing him. And that's just my opinion. But I think a lot of people make out, if they did it with Malik Cunningham, he signed a 3-year contract, like he's on the team.
Yeah, but let's not make it's not exactly what it appears to be.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of feel about with Belichick as well.
Okay, well, and look, I can't say that we didn't kind of know that maybe something like that was up anyway, even before all it came out, because the more we kept hammering on Bill and he needs to go, and fans kept calling for, especially locally, goodness gracious. I mean, it was you couldn't even listen to talk radio because it was so toxic toward Bill, but at the same time, you just kind of felt like if there really is something to it, it was going to come out. Sure enough, it did. And whether it was a leak, a plant, whatever you want to say, it was basically, to me, my way of interpreting Bill saying, cut the noise. We still have a season to play here, because you got now, you're 7 games into the season. I mean, goodness gracious, you got 10 more still to play.
Yeah,
that's a long time. 11 more weeks to cover here. 3 more months still to play football.
Yeah,
and it's like we can't be dealing with that now, and so we have no shot at pulling out of the morass here unless we put this behind us. Now, that doesn't mean that Bob Kraft, Mr. Kraft, couldn't still decide to do something. Just means that he might owe him some money depending on the terms of the contract, but herein lies the beauty of the deal, and it's all speculative. We don't know because none of the terms of the contract will ever be made public, likely.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that this much was made public was
a shock.
Yeah,
it tells me that, hey, all right, enough's enough. I'm going to leak it to Ian Rappaport, and that's basically what I interpret what happened.
Yeah, I think when it comes to this season, and I'm not just saying this because he signs my checks, but when it comes to this season, with the Crafts and Mr. Kraft in particular, I think the patience that you have to be able to show as an owner is hard, because deep down, he says it all the time, he's a Patriots fan. Right? He grew up a Patriots fan, is a Patriots fan.
That's what we all forget.
Yeah,
but you have to show. You make a very good point. Shocking. Did I just say that about him? He makes a very good point. The fact is that he has to not think like the fan he is. He has to think about the business and shut out the noise. And is this in the best interest of his business? I think we all realize that, look, Bill's going to be Bill in a lot of different ways, but at the same time, Bill also can't be completely oblivious to, let's just say, the NFL in 2023. And what's occurring, because otherwise we would never have seen this team get faster defensively over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
they would never have seen a quarterback like Mac Jones get drafted a couple of 3 years ago. They would have taken somebody else. So I'm just, the idea that he's lost it, that he's behind the times, that he doesn't know what he's doing any longer, whatever you want to say, and that's been the consensus from every fan that cares to tell me their opinion, and I nod my head and say, yeah, well, that's and I don't engage, because nobody gets it, nobody understands it. Fact of the matter is that 6 Super Bowl championships, okay, the AFC titles, the 19 division titles, whatever it is now, 17 division, I've lost count.
Yeah.
That still counts in the eyes of the boss.
Yeah.
And it should still count in the eyes of everyone else. And I believe the man has earned his right to work out of this. Now, if he doesn't work out of it, it's a different story. How much room, and I know this is the big question, big follow-up, how much rope are we going to give him?
Yeah.
How much rope are we going to give Bill Belichick? Well, I think, he's got the rest of this year. He just put out there in the last week that, okay, maybe 2, maybe even 3 years left. I always thought, to be honest with you, when we heard about the initial rumors about the contract, was that 2025 would probably be about the cutoff, because that would give him enough time, even in the really the worst of circumstances. I think that would give him enough time to pass Shula's record.
Yeah, I just think that, like you said, the resume buys him some time to get to a point where, when we came off that New Orleans game and they lost 2 back-to-back games by a combined 72-3.
Yeah.
A lot of people, myself included, if you had asked us, in that moment, gun to your head, what are you keeping him or are you firing him? I think a lot of people in Patriots Nation would have said fire.
Of course, because we all have, knee-jerk reactions.
Right. But
emphasis on the word jerk.
But Kraft, and the way that you have to run a football team, you can't just jump off the bridge after every loss, right? And
right.
And so my whole thing is, at this point, and I was, very excited, complimentary, whatever you want to put it about the game yesterday, about beating Buffalo. At this point, you have to wait it out and watch the whole body of work. If we get to the end of the season and they are a 4 or 5 win football team, then we have the conversation. If we get to the end of the season and they're middling again, but the arrow's not really pointing upwards, I still have the conversation. But I
think you have to have the conversation regardless.
I do think
even
that there's
if
a chance
even if this team wins 10 in a row, I think you still have to have a conversation.
Yeah, I just think that there's a chance that this team has the arrow pointed in the upward direction and they win. There's 10 games left, so let's say they win 8 out of 10, and maybe they don't make the playoffs. I think 8 would probably put them in. So let's say they win 6 or 7 out of 10, and they finish 8 and 9, but they had a really good second half of the year. Then maybe you can convince me that he stays. I think when it comes to the personnel decisions, the main thing is just the offensive game is moving in a different direction. The offensive game nowadays is all about space. It's about getting speed in space and having number 1 receivers and having high-flying passing games.
Miami Dolphins, hello.
And all those things. And the Patriots are still playing football in a phone booth.
Yeah.
And these other teams are playing football
because that's what he knows best. That's what he knows best. He knows how to bully people best. That defense, blah, blah, blah. And I know that you need a defense to win, but it's not all that it takes to win in this day and age. There's got to be more. And I think that's the part that Bill has had the hardest time with. Hence, bring in Bill O'Brien to come in and try to spruce this thing up. The problem is that I'm not sure that the personnel is ready to be where Bill O'Brien wants to take it on offense. I think they've still got work to do on the personnel end, whether that's Matt Groh, whether that's Bill, whether that's a combination of the two, whether they bring in someone else from the outside. That's still a work in progress. That's the conversation that really needs to be had once this season is over.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So Chad Graff, who covers the Patriots and the NFL for The Athletic, is going to join us here early in the program. So are you taking off then? Is that it? You're done? Okay, so Evan's going because we got a change in the locker room interview times today. So that's why Chad has been kind enough to join us here. And then thank you, Ev. And then Russell Baxter will be along in hour number 2. Armando Salguero from The Outkick, a longtime NFL contributor and follower of the Miami Dolphins, former beat writer for the Dolphins, in fact, for the Miami Herald. He'll join us here in about 15 minutes. In the meantime, Chad Graff joining us here in the Playbook. Chad, what are your thoughts on what Evan and I were just talking about in terms of Bill Belichick, the game passing him by? Do they still have a conversation about maybe moving some things around in terms of getting the Patriots' ducks in a row in the offseason?
Yeah, well, good to be part of this line change with Evan as we quickly transition on the fly. But
line change.
I think that you're completely right where you got to have a conversation at the end of the year regardless of how it happens. And any talk, I think, of something happening mid-season is a little bit crazy. Kind of let's see what happens. Let the Ducks, play out. Let's see, where that arrow is pointed at the end. And I think everybody can recognize that this personnel, probably doesn't match up with these 3 or 4 best in the league. So let's kind of see what Bill is able to do with this personnel and then make decisions after that about who gets to make the final call on personnel and things like that. So it's a little bit too early for all of that. But at the same time, I don't think it's overstating things to say that a ton rides on this game against the Dolphins on Sunday. Like, if you're at 2 wins at that point, going into a pretty easy stretch with Washington and Indianapolis, and the Chargers don't look as good. Like, you've got some winnable games coming up that if you can sneak out an upset over the Dolphins, all of a sudden the season is trending way, way up. But if you're still at 1 win after week 8, then, there are some tougher conversations that probably need to be had.
And I was just going to say, I know that, the first question I got asked by a neighbor friend of mine this week was, hey, should we start thinking about, January again? And I'm like, what, are you did the train hit you in the head? What's your problem? No, and I said, look, this team gets to 5-5, okay. Then I'd be convinced they're back in the mix. Until that point in time, this is put blinders on, go 1 week at a time, just try to get a little bit better, see if you can improve from week to week. And it certainly would start with a team like Miami. The interesting thing about Miami, Chad, because I don't want to lose sight of the Buffalo game just yet, but interesting about Miami that I noticed this morning when I'm looking at their stuff, They haven't beaten a team. They've only played. Wait, let me get it right. They've only played 2 teams with winning records. They've lost both of those games.
Yeah, they've just beaten up on some bad teams and done it in a way that is so emphatic, hanging 70 on the Broncos that they become the talk of the league.
Yep.
Amazingly, and this could all look really dumb in 4 days, but amazingly, I do think that the Patriots, as far as 1-win teams against 5-win teams go, I think that they match up pretty well against the Dolphins. I think that Bill's defense against this high-powered Miami offense has shown to be good. The Patriots have shown to be one of the few teams that can slow down Tyreek Hill. And then offensively for the Patriots, I think that this new thing that Bill O'Brien is doing, built on short passes and a better running game, I think that can work well against Vic Fangio, who is the Dolphins defensive coordinator and likes to play, with 2 deep safeties, and his whole thing is to take away the big explosive plays. Well, I think that Bill O'Brien looks at that and says, great, we're going to throw 3-yard passes to Demario Douglas, and if you want to give him room to run, have at it. So, maybe this looks crazy in 4 days, but for now, I do think that the Patriots match up pretty well against the Dolphins.
All right. I'll get back to the Dolphins again, but before I lose sight of Buffalo, what was the most surprising aspect of the win over the Bills this past weekend? And I say this because the Patriots were only barely what's a good way to phrase this? I'm looking for the correct terminology. I think Buffalo out-screwed up the Patriots, really, is I guess where I'm going with this, but it was only by a slim margin. Does that say anything about the talent level of the 2 teams? Does it say anything about the injuries that Buffalo has suffered? And keep in mind the Patriots have suffered 2 major injuries on their own defense. I'm just curious to what your after the fact aspect of that win over Buffalo is today.
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing for me was how clean the Patriots offense was. We've seen them have so many interceptions and pick sixes and fumbles and sacks and just sloppy play, and there were still probably too many penalties, and it was an officiating crew that certainly
knew where
that yellow flag was in their pocket.
Those guys were unbelievable, weren't they? That was Clete Bateman, right?
That part I'm not as worried, but yes, it was.
Yeah.
So I think they wanted some time on TV and made sure that they got their faces out there. But for an offense that just always, it seemed like, took 1 step forward and then 2 back, they finally progressed the right way, where they weren't shooting themselves in the foot and they weren't turning the ball over and they weren't giving up tons of sacks. Like that offensive line performance, if you want to zero in and look more specifically, maybe that was the most surprising thing to me, of how well the offensive line did once Mike Owen moved to right tackle.
Yeah, that to me was, I heard all the hubbub from the press box, I think, down where I'm located before the game, and that was overwhelmingly the universal, tidbit that came out of the pregame. So it was, Owenyu's finally been moved to right tackle. And clearly the offensive line had one of its better efforts of the entire year, which brought on, I'm sure, a lot of smug, I told you so, responses from said members of the media. But I think all we wanted was just another change, and let's move somebody out that could be somewhat competent at right tackle, and I think that's really more that what happened than anything else. And the fact is, Owenyu's been hurt, so he hadn't been able really to get out there.
Right, and not just get out there, but he's a bigger guy, and this has been an ankle injury. You better be able to move if you're playing right tackle against some of these speedy edge rushers, including against Miami. Miami has some speedy edge rushers, so I think it was a positive sign, a step in the right direction, and something that they should keep, but also keep an eye on that ankle injury, because, those don't just get solved overnight.
Right. Yep, no question. All right, so Chad Graff, who covers the Patriots for The Athletic, joining us here in the Playbook. Turn the page from Buffalo to Miami specifically. You've already mentioned that you actually believe this is a bit of a good matchup for the Patriots in particular. But with Miami, it all starts with figuring out a way to slow down, which the Patriots actually did kind of do, earlier this season already. But they've got to figure out a way to generate some offense on the other side to make this a game. Do they play Miami similarly to what they did in September, or should they just scrap that and come out with something completely different this time around?
No, I do think you stick with a lot of what you did. Like, Bill Belichick has had more success than any coach at slowing down Tyreek Hill. So I think that you build on some of that. I think it helps that Jack Jones is healthy and Jonathan Jones is healthy, and your cornerback group seems to be trending in the right direction after the Gonzalez injury. So you keep all of that and build off all of that. To me, more of the question is, was that a one-game aberration from the offense? Was that kind of a surprising thing that the Bills didn't see coming, and that Mac Jones's average pass went 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, which is in the first percentile of games since 2010? Or is that something that you can build on? Is the success with Demario Douglas an area that you can continue to kind of spam that easy button? The success that they had in the running game, can they continue that? The offensive line's better performance, is that something that can be consistent now with Onwenu at right tackle? So those are the big questions to me, which, is kind of bizarre. I think most teams, when they're preparing for the Dolphins, the questions are, how are you going to cover this team? And yet, I think it's a little bit different for the Patriots, where the questions are about how their offense matches up with Miami's defense.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I know you wrote about it in The Athletic yesterday. What the Patriots did offensively against Buffalo was a pleasant surprise, I think, to most observers. But what they did, is it's sustainable, beginning with, what they're going to face with Miami.
Yeah, and, I do think that the Vic Fangio part of it is intriguing, just the way that he plays defense and that his scheme has gotten so popular that I think Demario Douglas is kind of the guy to watch. And I know we've talked about him a ton, and you guys have talked about him a ton, going all the way back to training camp when he was doing so well. But if you're going to beat a defense like this, you need guys on underneath routes who are able to have yards after the catch. And he probably, more than any other player in this wide receiver group, can do that. So I'll be curious to see how involved the Patriots make him. Yeah.
I can't imagine that they wouldn't, figure out, as long as he's healthy, as long as he's clear of the doghouse, that he wouldn't continue to be a significant part of what the Patriots are doing, because it's pretty clear. There are two guys on that side of the ball that can be game changers for the Patriots, and neither one of them is Devontae Parker. It's him and it's Kendrick Bourne. So why wouldn't you try to continue to do what worked well? And what worked well against Buffalo was the short passing game, and I'm wondering, even though, I don't know with Miami defensively if that's all together the best thing to do, but then again, if you're starting to get into the groove and you're starting to just kind of figure this out, Chad, why wouldn't you kind of continue with that success until somebody stops it?
100%. It took this Patriots offense a long time to kind of find its footing and figure out, with this personnel and this health situation and this offensive line situation, to find something that worked. And so now that you have found something that works, I would be hard-pressed to stray away from that, even if the Patriots and even if Bill Belichick, more than any other team and any other coach, like to be game plan specific and like to switch things up just based on who you're playing. I would have a hard time switching things up too much. I think it was pretty telling, too, that on the very first play of the game, Bill O'Brien goes straight to Demario Douglas. Just because the other team knows that may be coming, I think you still keep going with that. Yeah,
and you mentioned something in your piece, I know, that kind of came as a surprise to me, because I'm not a big PFF guy, a big Pro Football Focus guy, but City So graded as the second best guard in the entire NFL in Week 7. Is that right?
Isn't that crazy?
That's insane. As much as we banged on him and Antonio Mafi this year, but for City So to step up and grade out that well, that tells me that line had a hell of a day.
For sure. And I think something Bill Belichick said today kind of speaks to that of, they were more willing to move him from tackle to guard, and you could try him out at tackle in camp and in the preseason to kind of see how it goes, while knowing the whole time that you had that in your back pocket, that you could switch him back to guard if you needed. And the Patriots certainly needed to. And thankfully for them, he was able to kind of quickly remember all the footstep differences in guard as opposed to tackle, and turned in a really good performance at a time the Patriots really needed some help on the interior offensive line.
All right, so a final one then for you, Chad. What do you think is sustainable? What should be sustainable for New England going forward? Do they try new things? Do they keep just trying to build on what they did last week? I'm just kind of curious as to, a lot of times you don't like to ruffle the feathers in the feather bed when things are just getting kind of nice and fluffy. I don't know if that's the right analogy that I want to use here, but I think you get the gist of what I'm going with.
I do. So I think that this is going to work, and this new offensive look is going to work for the next 3 or 4 weeks. The defenses that they're playing don't rank super high statistically over the next 3 to 4 weeks when you look at who's coming with Washington and Indianapolis after that. So I think that the Patriots can find some success with this current plan. And then my question is, in a month or so, when you've gotten through that easy part of your schedule and teams have realized, okay, Demario Douglas is their top target and this is how they're going to attack us, teams are going to adjust how they play the Patriots. And then the question becomes, do the Patriots have a counterpunch beyond this? So in the short term, I think it's going to work well. And I guess my only questions are the long term.
Yep. That would be the question, I think, for everybody at this stage of the game. Hey, Chad, thank you for the time today. Great to talk to you again.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Chad Graff again from The Athletic, who covers the New England Patriots and the NFL for The Athletic. He's at Chad Graff, Graff, on X. Armando Salguero. Best way to describe Armando is as he's been more than gracious to us with his time throughout the 22 years that we've been hosting this show, if you've listened to this show for any length of time. A lot of that time as the Miami Dolphins beat reporter for the Miami Herald. He now covers the NFL as a senior writer for Outkick. And Armando, gracious again today with his time with us here in the Playbook. Armando, the first thing I had to ask you today, though, was that you just did a piece, I think it was, what was it, yesterday, on Josh Allen. And getting some of his impressions on how it's been going. Actually, I saw it published earlier today, in fact. So, what was your take on Josh Allen? And is he missing a little off of his fastball of late?
Boy, yeah. So Josh Allen is talking to reporters yesterday, and that's great because they're playing on Thursday, and he's explaining to them how in the last couple of weeks he's changed the way that he approaches how he thinks in a game. And what he tries to do is try to stay low, not get too excited. And that allows him to think more because obviously a quarterback has to do a lot of thinking on the field. And then in the next breath, he says, but maybe I should stop thinking so much and just play. And so, and throughout the press conferences, he says one thing and then second guesses himself and says, but maybe I won't do this. I want to do this, but maybe I won't.
He's a walking, talking question mark.
And that is showing in his play. That is definitely showing in the fact that the last couple of years, if you combine them, he is among the NFL leaders in interceptions.
Right.
Now, this is a supremely talented quarterback. He's great, but obviously he's got something going on where the uncertainty has crept in, and I think it's the coaching, frankly. He lost Brian Daboll to the Giants, and Kenny Dorsey, who's from, played at the University of Miami, South Florida, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's just not the same.
Is that why a lot of fans in Buffalo, from what I'm hearing, seem to be jumping all over the head coach as well?
Well, the head coach has basically got his hands full with the defense because he kind of agreed to let Leslie Frazier go as the defensive coordinator. So now Sean McDermott is not de facto.
He is.
In fact.
Yeah.
The defensive coordinator as well as the head coach. So what's going on is, look, the Bills are supposed to be an elite team. They're not. They've already lost as many games as they lost all of last year. They've lost 2 in a row now. And it's not that their window is closing. It's just that they're not maximizing. They've got a couple of key injuries. And the division now is up for grabs.
I was just going to ask you that. Is their window closing? I think it is.
Yeah.
It
could be, John.
Yeah, I think it is.
You only get a certain amount of time. Now, obviously, if you're going the Joe Burrow route where Joe Burrow said, you know what, our window's never going to close as long as I'm here, and apply that to Josh Allen, you can state a case that their window's not closing.
Mm-hmm.
But as we just talked about, Josh Allen has his own issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Quarterback's in his own head. Oh, my God.
yes. Yeah. And the thing about it is, going back to that a second, he's asking people's advice, like outside the organization,
Yikes.
outside the club. Can you imagine if a New England Patriots quarterback
went outside the organization? Oh, my God.
I mean, an approach for winning this and playing this game. Let me go ask somebody who doesn't work for the New England Patriots.
Oh, the parallels are just uncanny on this one. So I thought that the timing of this was outstanding, number one. And number two, because, look, you just said it as well as anybody can say it, Armando. The Bills are still a good team. I don't know if they're an elite team anymore. They've had some injuries, yes. But the division is wide open. And so I guess now, if New England figures out a way to beat Miami this week, who the hell's going to win the damn thing?
Who knows?
I mean,
the
right?
Dolphins have their own issues right now.
Sure.
They can't beat a good team. They've got 5 wins, and those 5 teams have an 8-25 record. And
one of those, of course, including the Patriots. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, kind of blown out both times.
Yeah.
And by blowout, in the NFL, a blowout is, you lose by 17. You've been blown out.
Oh, sure. 2 touchdowns plus, that's a blowout. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's happening. They're doing good. They're doing good against, 0-6 Carolina and 2-5 Denver and,
2-5 New England.
Yeah, the Patriots. The Chargers, they beat the Chargers by a couple of points, and the Chargers are under 500 as well. I think they're 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
So, watch out if you're not good, the Dolphins will beat up on you. But if you're anywhere near mediocre, you're going to give them trouble.
Well, I think it all starts clearly on the offensive side, and Tua Tagovailoa and obviously Tyreek Hill, and we'll figure out, I guess, what Jalen Waddle's situation is here as the week progresses, and whether or not he's going to be up to snuff here. But it starts with slowing those guys down. But the guy that impressed me the most in meeting number one between these two teams was Raheem Mostert. I mean, here's a guy that I thought he was really good, a great weapon for San Francisco, and became expendable clearly when they moved in this guy named McCaffrey, who's done pretty well for them, in the aftermath. But Mostert, the Patriots had no prayer of even slowing him down, much less stopping him. And I'm wondering if Miami just didn't try to go back to basics and maybe just run Mostert left and Mostert right and Mostert up the middle, maybe to lull the Patriots into a false sense of security, stop the run, and then unleash Tyreek and whoever else thereafter.
That would make a lot of sense. The one little flaw in that thinking is that your offensive line is beat up.
Yeah, Isaiah Wynn, was he IR'd this week?
He's IR'd,
okay.
And it's going to be a while
Yep.
before he comes back, if at all, this season. Armstead is on IR, and he's not ready to come back yet. Connor Williams at center has not been playing because he's injured, and so, they've got significant issues up front.
Well, then, I guess as most of these battles come down to it sounds to me like this one this week is going to be in the trenches, and whether or not the Patriots' defensive front can somehow wreak havoc with an ever-changing Miami offensive front. Looks like it'll start there this week.
Absolutely. Now, what the Dolphins have a great ability to do that not all teams are able to do is they can overcome some flaws at the line of scrimmage, especially on offense, with great speed. They believe that speed kills,
Yep.
and if you ask the Denver Broncos, who swallowed a 70 burger from the Dolphins, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to cover Tyreek Hill, and it's hard to cover, Jalen Waddle, and it's hard to catch Raheem Mostert, and they're all, track stars who are in football uniforms. Bill Belichick has his work cut out for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the other X factor then for this weekend would also be whether or not Miami's defense can continue to make plays. They made a few of them certainly against the Patriots offense, and I guess they got to figure out a way also to supplement whatever they're able to do on offense by maybe turning some of the defense into offense. What's been, in your observation, what's been the bright spot defensively that Miami's defense can kind of hang their hat on and rely upon as being a consistent factor?
You're gonna be surprised by this. The defense's bright spot is that Jalen Ramsey, who hasn't played a down,
is coming back.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that will give them what looks like 2 lockdown corners, which a lot of teams are happy when they've got one, assuming that Jalen Ramsey is anywhere close to being, traditional Jalen Ramsey that everybody's, kind of been accustomed to. That is the thing that they are hanging their hat on, because if that happens, along with Xavier Howard on the other side at cornerback, now Vic Fangio, the new defensive coordinator, doesn't need to blitz, or can blitz rather, to get some pressure on a quarterback because he's got the outside locked down.
Right.
That's something that Fangio, who normally doesn't love blitzing anyway, has had to do less because he doesn't trust the secondary all the time. So
right.
Once that happens with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard is healthy, it opens up a new chapter for the Dolphins playbook on defense.
And herein lies the intrigue, because obviously Mac Jones has performed worse when he's under severe pressure. I'd like to see Miami bring the pressure. And what the Patriots had success with last week against the Bills was the short, quick passing game. So it sounds to me like we might see more of the same this Sunday, or at least potentially.
All I care about is not having to watch gritties. That's all I care about. I don't want to see gritties. I'm done with the gritty.
I didn't even think it was a very good gritty. It wasn't a very good one.
Done with the Mike Gesicki. When he was on the Dolphins, he promised to stop doing that. And there it is on Sunday. There it was again. It was like the Undertaker, the wrestler, coming back from the dead.
If you watch the video at the end of that, after he does that very bad gritty catching that touchdown pass, the best part of that touchdown pass was actually the handshake that David Andrews did. I think it was with Kendrick Bourne in celebration of that. Their handshake was like, oh, dude, that took some time to plan.
I didn't see that, but I did see that Mac Jones, he also tried to do the gritty, and it was worse than Gesicki. I was like, what is this?
The gritty.
This
I know.
is terrible. My eyes got scarred.
I know. I can't even do the what the hell is the one with the what?
You can't even name them.
I don't even know what the hell it is. It's the one like when you're cleaning your teeth. What's that stuff?
Floss.
Oh, the floss. I can't even do the floss. I tried doing the floss once, and my 28-year-old son dead. Stop. I'm like, okay.
At least you were smart enough not to do it in front of 65,000.
Oh, God, no kidding. Oh, my God. Hey, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you also about your podcast with Donovan McNabb on the Our Kick YouTube channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Donovan McNabb, who, once upon a time, I believe, lost the Super Bowl to
the Patriots, yeah.
to the Patriots.
He did.
But great guy, super smart individual, knows football in and out and sideways. And so we've got a podcast on the Outkick YouTube channel every Tuesday and Friday. And, we special guest, the whole thing. Doug Peterson was on it this week. Andy Reid was on it last week. So please tune in.
Helps to have somebody like, Donovan McNabb with star power pull these guests in, right?
Absolutely.
See, we're just a one-man operation. Me and the Marine. The Marine pulls in all the guests for me, and that's basically how we roll it here. So that's why we're ever grateful to your loyalty, Armando.
Anytime, John. It's always my pleasure, sir.
Thank you, sir, for the time today, and I hope that we'll get a chance to run into each other on the trail someday.
Sounds good.
All right, very good. Thank you. Armando Salguero, or you can get him on X at Armando Salguero, Salguero. Give him a follow. Good info. And I just thought it was the wildest thing because this week, obviously we're talking about Miami, and it's like, first thing I'm going to do is talk to Marina, say, hey, let's get Armando on the show again because we rely on our old, contacts through the years because Armando spent better part of over 2 decades as the beat writer and NFL columnist for the Miami Herald covering the Dolphins. And then it's been, 3 years maybe that he's been without Kick? Yeah, I think it's been about 3 years that he's been without Kick, and he got a big promotion, senior NFL writer. So he's not just covering the Dolphins, although the Dolphins are still a specialty, and he still covers them from time to time. But, I mean, it's kind of like, well, who really knows the Dolphins better than a guy who's covered them for, better part of 3 decades? And if he's a friend of the show, then why wouldn't we want to bring his take into the process here, especially when the Patriots are getting ready to play them? And so that's a no-brainer. But then I imagine my surprise. I'm reading his stuff this week, and all of a sudden I see this story pop up about Josh Allen and Josh Allen getting into Josh's own head, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, I'm sensing some kind of a crease, in the atmosphere here or something, because there's something going on in Buffalo. There's something going on in Buffalo, and as I kind of alluded to during that conversation, I'm like, the first thing that when I read his story, and when I saw it early this morning, when I'm thinking about the show today, and I read the story, and I'm like, it's over. The Bills' window of opportunity, their woo, I like to call it the woo window of opportunity. Get it? Their woo is done. There ain't no more woo in Buffalo. I'm sorry. That's my impression, at least, at this stage.
Just going to let you know Wu-Tang fans won't like that.
Wu-Tang, sorry. I never got Wu-Tang. Sorry, just never got it. I just never got it. I'm sorry. What do I know?
Wu-Tang before the show.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should play a little Wu-Tang, as a lead into the show, and then I'll get it, maybe, sort of. I don't know. Will I? No, I won't get it. I didn't think so. Just being honest. But I think Buffalo's kind of lost their woo a little bit. And so, and then to see him say that, somebody else clearly thinks the same way. And so you're coming off the Buffalo game, and you feel so much better about yourself. You feel, a little bit better about the organization. Maybe Bill's not as dumb as everybody thought he was. Maybe these guys aren't as bad as you thought they were. I don't know. Look, things change when you win. The roses smell prettier. The sun shines brighter. The tacos taste taco-ier. Okay. Is that a thing? I just made it one. I'm just saying, things are different when you win. It doesn't really... We're not throwing dirt on the problems that this franchise has. There's still a lot of what I would call disciplinary issues. They did, have 6, 7 penalties last week. And like I said, Buffalo was just they just out-Buffaloed them because Buffalo had like 9 penalties last week. And I'm like, God. And then, of course, they had the 2 turnovers. The Patriots had 1. So the Patriots actually won the turnover battle 2-1. I'm just like, wow. And so Buffalo just stunk worse, really, than the Patriots did. The thing that was so surprising, really, about the Patriots' effort was the fact that they scored 29 points after it all. And I realize Buffalo's missing a bunch defensively because of their injury situation, but really, there are a lot of teams in the same boat. Hello, New England. They're in the same boat, too. They're missing their 2 best starters. So I hate to put a lot of extra credit on the table here. I think it's nothing more than really kind of what Coach Belichick said it was. It's a good win against a divisional opponent, yada yada. We're on to Miami, and really that's the way you have to look at it. I mean, you're just through 7 weeks, but this team, and we tend to be recency biased, do we not? Especially coming off that spanking at the hands of the Saints. And then, getting beat by, a Raiders team that, deserves to be thrashed every time out that they play. I mean, come on. I like Josh McDaniels as well as the next Patriot fan, but I just don't think the guy's head coach. I just don't. It just doesn't look like. I mean, this is his third time. You know, you have to count Indianapolis because he got the job and then he said no. So, but this is his second time to be a head coach, and I don't know how well it's going to go for him. I hope for the best. I do. But they shouldn't have beat that Patriots team that day. They should not have done it. Shouldn't have done it last year either. The Patriots are like this far away. I'm holding my fingers. If you're not watching, I'm holding my fingers about an inch apart. Okay? About an inch apart. Is that about right, Maureen? Yeah, about like that? Okay. They're really that kind of far away. As bad as it's been, as much as Mac Jones has been maligned, as much as we have absolutely and deservedly hammered the offensive line, and you know what? I don't mean to hammer those players as individuals. We hammered the group collectively. And we hammer the people that brought those people, into that situation because they're the ones on the hook for it. They're the ones that are doing the navigation. They're the ones that are, doing the observation. They're the ones doing the scouting and the signing and everything else. Clearly, there's work still to be done. There's work to be done, however, on every football team. I mean, you'd say right now that the San Francisco 49ers are one of the best teams in pro football, would you not? Probably, right? Okay, well, they just got spanked the other night by the Minnesota Vikings. Come on. How is San Francisco supposed to lose to a team like Minnesota? They're not. But guess what? They do. Why? Because in the NFL, it's Parity turned into Parody. Parity is parity. But that's what the NFL wants. That's what Grand Poobah Roger Goodell wants. It's what the owners want. They want everybody to have the ability to beat up on anybody on any given Sunday. Wasn't there a movie on Any Given Sunday? Was that the one with De Niro? No, Pacino.
Yeah.
Pacino, right? Yeah. Was that where the blimp flew over the Super Bowl stadium and blah, blah, and all that stuff? Was that the one on Any Given Sunday? Okay. I'm getting my sports movies mixed up here.
Might not have been LL Cool J. I might be mixing it up too.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. Okay.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. But I knew that there was a movie that was entitled that. At any rate, see, now I lost my train of thought. The thought is that it's so equal out there that it only takes little things to win. And so the little things that can help a team win are the things that the Patriots got away from doing this year. Limiting penalties, limiting turnovers, forcing turnovers from the other team. Those are the three little things that the Patriots got away from doing in the opening weeks of the season. Now, granted, the opening 4 weeks of the season is the toughest stretch, in my estimation, that they had on the schedule all year. And the schedule looks like it's really it can definitely play into New England's favor. If they can figure out a way to win in Miami this weekend, I'd be surprised if this team wasn't 5-5 at some point, and then a chance to build and really be in the mix. And we're going to go from right now. Here's a good one, okay? Here's a good one. I saw this today, right? I had a couple of different people figured this part out. If the season ended today, it doesn't, but if it ended today, the Patriots would have the number 6 draft pick in the first round based on the record and the tiebreakers, okay? They would also be next to last in the AFC playoff chase, but only 2 games out of the playoffs in the AFC. How about that? They're 2-5, but they're only 2 games behind Buffalo, who holds the 7 spot right now, and they hold the tiebreaker over the Bills. Ha! Get that.
Any given Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. That one just blew me away right there. Hey, you know what? Okay, so they end up with the record that they had, the number 6 pick in the draft. Okay, great. I know a lot of people would love to see that. I do. My own son, the rookie, he's like, tank. And I'm like, no, what are you doing? You don't even know what you're talking about. Nobody tanks on purpose. Nobody does. Your professional pride won't allow you to tank. So when you hear that they should tank, that's stupid. Don't think that, because it's not going to happen. Now, management and coaching staffs can make decisions that would allow you not to be at your best. And so if you want to call that a form of tanking, all right, fine. then leave it at that. Call it a form of tanking. But it's not. The players don't tank. The players want to go out and kick your butt. Always a competitor. Always a competitor. They want to go out and cause you misery. That's what players want to do. But, can general managers and upper management, can they make decisions that would, in effect, hamstring your team? Yep. Can coaches play different guys that would, in effect, make your team not as good as the other one? Sure. Especially in a league that has as much parity, and I'll use Parity in this instance. In a league that has as much parity as the NFL, sure. One little move, two little moves, yeah. That can make a difference in a ball game. I mean, how else can a move as simplistic as starting Michael Wenu at right tackle, because he's got a little size, make such a huge difference on a Patriots offensive line that's been abysmal this season? I'm just saying. Now, do I think that the Patriots played, others there on purpose? No, because Oweno hadn't been healthy. But it's also a move that I think universally had been clamored about by a lot of members of the media who cover this team on a day in and day out basis. And I know a lot of fans have been feeling the same way about it as well. And I know a lot of you follow it really closely. And so sure enough, they make the change. Oweno comes in, and it's a different looking offensive line. Mack actually stood up under pressure and fired the ball and fired a couple of great shots on that winning drive. Now you can't say Mack's never won one in the fourth quarter, because he certainly did the other day after this team looked like it was going to hand that one back to Buffalo. After leading by double digits, it looked like, right? And then they come storming back. So I think we have to give credit where credit is due in that regard. But at the same time, this team, this team is, I've really been searching for a term on this, and I can't really come up with it. This team, well, it's not far away. Okay, let's just leave it at that. It's never been far away. And you have to see that if you had all of your pieces to the puzzle in place, healthy, not ripped up, not torn up, not on IR, not here, not there, but playing and performing well, there's absolutely a case that this team that's 2-5 right now could be 4-3. And if you're 4-3, you're tied with Buffalo for the last playoff spot. That's how close this team really is. And we thought going into this season, I thought going into this season, that New England was a potential playoff team based on the personnel. Yeah, I said it. Based on the personnel, I thought they had enough to be in the playoffs. Now, a contending team, a Super Bowl team, nope, and that's different. And then we saw Miami's speed, right? We saw Miami's speed in September, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen a faster team ever on a football field, bar none. It was a track meet. Patriots had no clue. I mean, and the Patriots are quicker, and they're more athletic defensively. And they couldn't keep up with Miami's speed. And so that is still a major concern, I think, for this weekend. But Miami's lost a little edge, and Miami also knows, and reading up on the Dolphins this week, they also know they haven't beaten anybody. The question is, do they still consider the Patriots somebody? 855-PATS-500 is the toll-free telephone number. 855-PATS-500. Toll-free. It's web radio at patriots.com. On the email, if you want to send an email. Follow me on X, at JR Broadcaster, or you can hit up my Facebook page. Russell Baxter will join us at the bottom of this hour. We've already had Chad Graff and Armando Salguero and even Evan Lazar in the opening part of this show, simply because the locker room times kind of changed up for both teams. So we moved some things around to get everybody on the program so you could hear from them and they could talk to you. In the meantime, let's go to Patty in Agawam. And Patty, hello. How are you?
What's going on, John?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right today.
Well, I think we're all doing a little bit better.
I'm all right.
Yeah, we're all doing a little bit better. I mean, you feel a little better today. If you're looking at it from a not even a big picture point of view. If you're looking at it from an immediate point of view, you're looking at things a little bit differently. But even big picture, you can start to see that, well, maybe that light at the end of the tunnel isn't an oncoming train just yet.
Not yet. Hopefully. Fingers crossed, too.
Yeah.
So, you and I, more so you, because you've been watching the NFL hell of a lot longer than I have.
Well, it's because I'm a hell of a lot older than you are, so that's why, probably, right?
Is it necessary to throw the hell of a lot longer in there?
Yeah. Marine just said, yeah, I noticed you put the hell of a lot older in there, and I'm like, yeah, I have to. So it is what it is. But, hey, that doesn't lessen your opinion at all. I'm interested in your take, and that's why we do this show. I want to know what people are thinking. I want to know what you're thinking.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. Here's the question I want to pose to you, and here's where I'm coming from. We know historically, even with the greatest player of all time on our team, we were subpar at best going into Miami and playing. And it didn't matter if it was September, November, December, whenever.
Mm-hmm.
This team has struggled in Miami. More specifically, the team with Mac Jones. There's no way around it. And historically, they've never really played all that great down there. So I'm a little bit worried about that. And my question to you is, can you give me at least a couple of reasons why I should be hopeful this week, this Sunday?
Yikes. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no. No, that's not entirely true. I think number one, I think that Miami is for the first time this year because they lost, albeit they lost to a good team this last week. They lost to Philly, and Philly, in my estimation, is probably the overall best team in the NFL right now, top to bottom. At least they're certainly playing that way, record-wise. And the Patriots obviously played them very well and probably should have won that game, in the opener. But they didn't. So, but it kind of shows you where, even maligned, where the Patriots could be. They could be amongst some of the best in the league if all things were going right. So are the Patriots moving in the right direction? Well, they didn't really move in the right direction over the first 4 or 5 weeks of this season, but, at least they didn't take a Mother May I big step backward this last week against Buffalo. Now, what can you use from Buffalo in order to make this better for Miami? I think if nothing more than just pure out-and-out self-confidence occurs, then I think that's where the Patriots are going to benefit most. I still worry about Miami's overall speed. I still worry about, Raheem Mostert, gouging the Patriots up the middle because they're so worried about the speed it leaves the middle of the field open, and that's where he killed them back in September. He got into the the second level, and he just Mostert had a hell of a day. He was over 100 yards and big touchdowns at the end, and and he basically ruled the roost. So if you're going to take out Tyreek Hill, which is what I expect the Patriots to try to do, then that means that the rest of the guys got to figure out a way to to be there for Mostert, because Mostert's the one that bothers me. I think the other issue is I don't think is he on IR? I have to look at that, because if he's not able to play either, and I think he was injured for a while, then that's only going to help New England's cause, because that makes Miami less of a dual threat. So I think you kind of understand where the pieces to the puzzle are if you're looking at this, trying to guard this, ultra-quick, super-fast Miami offense. You got to keep everybody in front of you. You don't want anybody to get behind you, and I think they played that way largely in Week 2 when they lost, but at the same time, they got killed up the middle. Maybe that doesn't happen because of the offensive line troubles that Armando was telling us about just a little while ago. So in that regard, I actually feel a little better. And with the Patriots feeling a little more confident and showing finally that, hey, look what happens when we limit our mistakes. I didn't say eliminate them. I said when we limit our mistakes. If they can go to Miami and limit their mistakes again and maybe force Miami into one more turnover or two more turnovers than the Patriots get, I like their chances a lot. I'm not quite ready to say if the Patriots win the turnover battle, they win the game. But I think if the Patriots win the turnover battle, they can win the game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm wondering if they try to, employ kind of the same defensive scheme that they used against Buffalo, because the first game against Miami, they did. I mean, they sat back, they sort of let them have the run, and it ended up killing them. They were still able to move the ball, but with what they're dealing with on their offensive line, I wonder if they come after Tua and try and get him off of his spots and get him on the move too.
Sure.
Not saying that he's not good on the move, but that and I hope they have the same offensive line that they did. And my big worry is them not holding him to 24 points and getting into a shootout. And I don't see that ending well if that ends up happening.
All right. So you asked also, or you were talking about how the Patriots haven't done well at Miami. They have lost 5 of the last 6 in Miami since 2017, and 8 out of the last 10 since 2013 in Miami. Before that, and this was obviously toward the latter part of the Tom Brady era, they actually had won 5 of 6 in Miami. So they've lost 8 of 10, but that comes on the heels of going 5-1 at Miami. If that, I don't know if that makes you feel any better or not, but that's where we've been, at least recently in the last 7 or 8 years. They've lost 8 of the last 10 down there.
Yeah, and I remember them winning in early 2017 on New Year's Day because I was homesick.
Right. Watching
the game on my recliner. And that was the game that Julian had that big touchdown with Michael Floyd had a huge block on his touchdown.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a sort of a house of horrors for them just historically, and I do think if they're able to go down there and pull this one out, the next 2 games after that, I'm not penciling it in. I'm not penciling anything in, but they are definitely more winnable games than this Sunday.
Not penciling it in. Okay.
Definitely not.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair. I guess that's fair. So you got a score? You want to predict it?
Yeah. I'm going to say it's 31-27 Miami. I hate to say it, but I'm just going by history, John.
I'll be honest with you. I actually think that's a little more high scoring than I think it'll be. I know Miami, hung 70 on the Broncos, but I just, gosh. I think the Patriots would just, go, 3 yards in a cloud of dust on offense if Miami started ringing up the scoreboard. And I still don't understand how Sean Payton could let a game like that get out of control like that, get out of hand like that. I don't think that would ever happen to a Bill Belichick team. I just don't think it would.
Yeah, me neither.
70.
I'm just going by history. I mean, if they had showed me something against the Saints, the game I was at, and against the Cowboys, if they were a little bit more consistent, I might say that they'd have a better shot of going down there and taking it. But I don't know. I'm hopeful, John, but at the same time, I'm not holding my breath. I hate to be a fence sitter, but
no. I know. Believe me, because that's exactly what I've been doing all day. I've been sitting on the fence and trying to dangle my feet off of both sides, and I don't like either side yet. So I guess the arrows are going to come from all sides now, because I clearly this has been one of the tougher, pick'ems for me, because I'm trying to look at it somewhat analytically. If you go, with the emotion and you go with the momentum, yeah, you might tend to favor New England. But at the same time, you realize, how the individual matchups rely, and you've got, still got a speedy Miami offense, especially if Waddle goes, and against a Patriots defense that, is missing, arguably their 2 best defenders. It's kind of hard to reason that way, that you could see, realistically, a potential win, especially we consider how difficult, as we pointed out a couple of moments ago, how difficult it is to win down in South Florida. So, but it's going to add some intrigue. And look, as we said earlier with Evan in particular, and also with Chad and even with Armando, if the Patriots figure out a way to win this game and get to 3-5, okay, just to get there, Okay, and then, you've got a couple of games left to go. You got the trip to Germany to get going before, you get to an off week and all that kind of stuff. Now you're talking about, okay, this team might actually have a shot to play its way back into some kind of postseason discussion. And, you could have knocked me over with a feather on that one 10 days ago, right? I think you could have, people would have looked at you and laughed. They're probably still laughing, which is fine, but that's the nature of the beast. So if you want to call that the Parity or the Parody of the NFL, well, that's what we're facing. And everybody faces that every week in this league. That's part of the entertainment value that we have with this. Patriots fans are so used to dominating, they don't really understand how even Steven this stinking league really is and can be, and how it can change literally and swing literally on one injury or one mistake or one penalty, and it can swing on just about anything. That's part of the fun, and that's part of the agony. So it is what it is, right? I think that's why Bill came up with that answer anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, how great would it be a week after Mac exercises those demons of winning a game where the opponent scores 25 points and, coming back in the last 2 minutes to win a game.
Oh, yeah.
For Belichick to finally get that win over Tua.
Yeah, right.
And you know me, like the Dolphins are my NFL Yankees. So they're my least favorite team in the league. It makes me sick to my stomach that we haven't beaten Tua yet. And there's a reason. I mean, they're good. And as much as I hate to say it, they're a good squad.
Is it possible that the Patriots decide to game plan for Tua rather than Tyreek Hill just because they've never beat the guy?
I hope so, and I think that goes back to what I said. I would like to see them employ sort of the same strategy they used against Buffalo and just come after them. Just come after them, hit them, and instead of hitting the receivers or playing off of them.
Yeah, I think that's
and hit them.
I think you might see a little bit of that because you're right. Number one, Miami looks to be somewhat vulnerable on the offensive line because they've got some injury issues, that has certainly plagued New England. The problem with that is that if you come after him, you better get him because if they complete the ball to Tyreek or anybody else really, but then they're going to kill you in the secondary. They're going to murder you. So you got to make sure that if you go after him, you get him.
Yeah, and you can't miss tackles this week.
Nope.
Can't do it.
Nope. And there were a lot of missed tackles last week, and that was one of my biggest nitpicks this week was all the missed tackles, especially that came in the secondary. It was like, these guys forget how to wrap up? These guys forget how to make a tackle? They forget how to complete a tackle? My God, the J.C. Jackson thing on the touchdown that Buffalo scored at the end, that was Diggs, right? I was like, and he spun out of it and got into the end zone? What the hell was that? I mean, that's a benchable offense. You're not wrapping up on somebody like that. You had him down at the 3. You had him down inside the 5-yard line, and then he spins out of it and scores because you can't finish the tackle? Come on, man. That's Bush. That's total Bush. So, I mean, hey, we all know what J.C. Jackson is. It was that way when he was playing well here a couple of years ago. He is a feast or famine guy. And, he can make big plays and he can pick off passes, or at least he did 2 years ago. And he can also give up big plays. Well, he gave one up. So as far as I'm concerned, J.C., you down one now, and you owe us one.
Hey, he had a pick in the first game when he played for the Chargers. Let's hope we see.
Well, yeah, but that was with another team. There needs to be a pick, on this end, and then all is forgiven, and we can move on from that point. That's that's how I look at it. Look, you make a mistake. A lot of guys are going to make mistakes, but make up for it. Make up for it. That's why we play. Keep playing. You can't dwell on the past. You make up for it. The problem is nobody's made up for anything. They keep making mistake. And so at some point in time, you have to have personal accountability in here. And not enough guys have taken personal accountability. Some of the rookies, it may be more difficult because they just don't know any better. But there has to be a personal accountability, and there's just not enough of that going on. And, hey, 5-10 years ago, this would not have happened under Bill Belichick. And to me, that's the biggest difference, other than Tom Brady not being a quarterback. That's the biggest difference in the Patriots now from the Patriots then. There's very little accountability. Maybe that's senior leadership in the locker room. I don't know. And I'm not blaming Matt Slater. I'm not blaming, Jabril Peppers, who did the whole, family yell, in the locker room after, the game this past week. That's fine. Great. Good. I'm glad that new guys are stepping up and they want to be leaders. But more guys have to have a personal accountability for poor performances. Trent Brown, one of them. And then Trent graded out pretty well last week. I mentioned to Chad Graff earlier, I'm like, good God, City Sal was the second highest graded tackle in the NFL last week. Guard in the NFL last week. Good Lord. We've hammered that guy unfairly because he's a rookie. But if he's able to play at that kind of a level, what does that tell you about his talent level that the Patriots originally saw? And maybe, the Patriots' original scout and determination that he would be worth the pick where they got him was not off. A lot of intrigue left out there, Patty. A lot of intrigue.
Yes, sir. Great stuff as always, John.
Thanks, buddy.
Great stuff with UMC and the Hall of Fame induction too.
Well, you're kind to say that. That's a lot of fun for me every year. That's a lot of fun for me to do because I am, being the old school, person that I am, a chance to kind of get in there and be a part of, Patriot tradition. For the 64 years that this team has been in existence, and I've been here for 32 of those 64 years, so one half of the Patriots' existence, which to me blows me away every time I think about it. But I get to see, when we introduce the players as they come out, guys that were with the original Boston Patriots of the AFL and guys that were with, the Super Bowl 20 team. And one of my dear friends, on this planet now has turned out to be Pete Brock, who was the center on that Super Bowl 20 team and, played alongside one of the greatest to have ever played the game on the line, and John Hanna. Yeah, and then other guys like, who I ran into this week, who I had a wonderful chat with after the ceremony was over, was Mark Van Eegen. And, Mark Van Eegen only played in New England for a couple of years. His notable part of his NFL career came playing for the then Oakland Raiders, as we all know. He was a part of the whole, Miller Lite commercial and all that kind of stuff, right? That was in his heyday, and he was playing back in the days of guys like Phil Villapiano and when Jim Plunkett was quarterbacking, and Kenny Stabler was quarterbacking, and he was a running back back then, and they had Fred Biletnikoff as a wide receiver, and Mark only played in New England for a couple of years. But I rarely get a chance to see him anymore because he's kind of a homebody, and his son-in-law is Dan Copen. And
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, his middle daughter was actually Mark's middle daughter. Amber was a Patriots cheerleader for a few years, and then after she left, she and Dan Copen started dating, and they got married. And now they have 2 kids, and so I told Dan, I saw Dan, and we spoke. And by the way, he's shed a lot of his football weight, and it's amazing to see a lot of these guys who played recently, guys like Sebastian Vollmer, Copen, Nate Solder, all those guys were there this last week. How much weight they've taken off. Pete Brock's another one.
Even like a guy who, he never played for the Patriots, but like Joe Thomas. I think you see that a lot with the offensive linemen.
Well, they tell, and I asked Pete about it because Pete and I have done college football broadcasts together. He's been color, and I've been the play-by-play in a lot of college football games over the years, and I asked him, I said, so, why did you shed the weight, and why does this seem to be an ever-growing, not slowing down trend? He said, because of the weight it puts on our legs and our knees and our joints. And he says, the quicker you can take that weight off, the longer your own joints are going to last. And that makes a lot of sense. So they've gone from, their playing weight in their days of, 275, 280, 290, maybe even in Copen's case, 300. They're down to svelte, 225s. They've dropped 75, 80 pounds. I didn't recognize Nate Solder. I did not recognize Nate. And he was up on the dais. If you watched any of the ceremony, I'm just like, that's Nate Solder? Holy crap. Where did he go? He looks like he could, suit up and play a stretch 4 for the Celtics right now. He's big, he's lean, he's thin. I'm like, dang. Does he have a jump shot? Let's go. And I'm just like, wow. I was amazed. And then even Dan Copen, when we were talking about his father-in-law in Mark, and I had a great conversation with Mark, but I'm just like, you're going to drag your dad out a little bit, your father-in-law out a little bit more to some of these things. Bring him along. We love to see him be more involved in some of these alumni things. And even Copen's like, wow, Dan, you look fabulous. You look fabulous. So, and they all take the weight off because it's just a strain on their joints and on their internal organs. And so, hey, kudos to these guys for recognizing that, hey, you know what? We do have an afterlife after football, and it's important for us to take care of ourselves, and a lot of these guys are taking it to heart. But in those guys in particular, that's who I saw this weekend at the thing, and that was really eye-opening for me, Patty. So I'm glad you asked, and that's so much fun for me to be a part of, and I'm glad the Patriots have allowed me to be a part of it.
Great stuff. All right, John, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon. Patty and Agawam. 855-PATS-500 if you want to jump on. 855-PATS-500. Web radio at patriots.com. And obviously at JR Broadcaster on X. Sean sends this email just a short while ago. He says, congratulations on getting what you've been demanding for years. The Patriots took the ball first. Yeah. I guess they have. Well, the only problem with that is, he says, let's see if they choose that the next time they win the toss. There you go. Right? He says, of course, that worked because they scored. I have a rare in-person audition in an hour from now, so I can't call in. But my prediction for Sunday is Dolphins 27, Patriots 20. I hope I'm wrong again like I was last week. That's Sean in Vancouver. Good luck with your interview, Sean. Good luck with your interview. Yeah, look, I know that that's something that I've harped on for a long, long time. And, I'm sure it's laughable to many, but the point is that you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, especially when the same thing doesn't work. The time and era for playing, two-score football like that, into the first half, first possession of the second half is over. OVA, over. You don't have TB12 at quarterback any longer. You certainly don't have a Tua Tagovailoa or a Pat Mahomes or even a Brock Purdy. You don't have that, and that's really taking nothing away from Mac Jones. He didn't have the weapons either in order to do that. Nor does I believe he have the experience to really pick apart a defense in the final 4 minutes of the first half or the first 4 minutes of the second half. And so for the Patriots to continue to harp upon, well, we want to go for the double score, it'd be the last team to have the ball, first team to get the ball, and not let the other team, touch the ball, and you conceivably score twice. I mean, that's I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous. I was going to go with another R word, but I think decorum will keep me from saying that. Right?
Bring it back.
I know. Miss Robin and I were talking about that the other day. I'm just like, really, what's wrong with that?
Medical definition at one point.
Well, and here's the thing. The true definition of that word, the other R word, okay, it means that it's a lack of growth. That's all it is. We're not saying it to be personally offensive to anybody. It indicates a lack of growth. And so what the Patriots are doing every time they take the damn ball, or every time they defer, shows a distinct lack of growth. It also shows a distinct lack of intelligence. And these guys, like I said before, and I'll continue to say it, they've forgotten more football than I'll ever know. They've forgotten more football than Evan Lazar will ever know. And Evan knows a lot. For a young man, he knows a ton about football. That's why I'm glad he's still a part of our shows here. And I know many of you listen to his pod that he does, the Catch 22, and listen to what he has to say on Patriots Unfiltered. And we utilize Evan in all these formats because, frankly, he's a good football guy. What he says makes a lot of sense. My biggest problem is that I put too much common sense into it. And a lot of times common sense doesn't compute with some of these football brains. And I think that's kind of what gotten away from the Patriots here. They're so damn used to just, we want the two-score chance, and don't really think about it. How about a little forethought? It's clear, painfully clear to see that this New England team was struggling to get anything going early. Okay, I mean, there's especially I'm talking about on the defensive side now, and so their slow starts once they got the ball were painfully obvious as well. How about changing it up and giving them a chance to play from a lead? Now, again, I know the offense was struggling, but you can't score realistically without the ball. Maybe give Mac 10 or 12 or 15 scripted plays, win the toss, take the ball. Give them 10 or 12 or 15 scripted plays and get, I don't know, a field goal out of it. That's what they did this last Sunday, and they won. What the hell? That's all I'm saying. Do I think you should take the ball every time you win the toss? No. I think there might actually be an opportunity to defer and take the ball to start the second half, especially if you feel like, you can control the other team's offensive line, defensive line, the trench war. If you can win that a little bit, all right, fair enough. So we feel like we can control the line of scrimmage, then maybe we take a shot at it. And maybe we play the clock, and maybe we've gotten better at clock management, and maybe we figure out to, all right, 4 minutes the first half, 4 minutes of the second half. Maybe we feel like we can get to that point and try for the double score. It just depends really on the opponent and the opportunity and the momentum and everything else that goes along. It cannot be carte blanche every time. And I remember even saying in the booth on Sunday, thank God they lost the toss. Thank God. Now there's a chance. There's a hope. And what did they do but score in the opening drive for the first time this year? Blinds, the headline should read, Blind Squirrel Finds Nut.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
It has to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter
Now on, your name is Flounder.
on Patriots Playbook.
Flounder.
Also known as our own personal blind squirrel here in the playbook. Russell, how are you today?
Can I be Secret Squirrel?
You could be Rocky the Flying Squirrel.
If I'm Secret Squirrel, that makes you Adamant.
All right, then if you're Rocky the Flying Squirrel, I'll be Bullwinkle.
Well, the bull part I get.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
That might be the meanest thing I've ever said to you in 23 years.
No, I don't look at it like that, though. If you can't bust chops with one of your friends, then who the hell can you bust chops with?
That's very true.
Right?
That's very true. Exactly.
So give me what your initial impression. How much did you see of the game on Sunday, and what was your impression after you finally learned the score in that one?
Well, no, I saw much of it, especially the frantic finish. And give credit where credit's due. If you're the Patriots and you've had the season that you've had, and you watch that lead just squirt away in the blink of an eye, and then had roughly less than 2 minutes left to make salvage a win, and you drive the length of the field basically,
yeah,
and get the job done,
yeah,
and kudos to a team that some people wrote off. They wind up scoring their most points of the season. Okay,
mm-hmm.
And we could talk about the Bills in a little bit, by the way, too, because as I was pointed out in a piece that I did for Ian for Full Press. First off, they've already lost as many games as they did all of last year.
Right.
Second, they've had a trend, John, of their defense failing them later in the season. Their defense is failing them already.
Yeah.
Especially against the run.
So the trend is not going well for Buffalo right now.
Right. And I don't care what kind of league. It's funny. Buffalo stumbled out of the gate. They won, 3 straight games and pummeled the Dolphins. And since pummeling the Dolphins, they've lost 2 or 3.
Yep.
And that, even though it was a 5-point game in London against Jacksonville, they gave up over 470 yards of total offense.
Ooh, their
run defense, which was top 5 last year, is 23rd in the league right now.
Mm.
And I don't care if this is a
passing league. If you can't stop the run, then you can't stop
There's no
about anything.
Yeah, there's no question, Russell. They missed Ed Oliver last week. That was the
Right.
biggest egregious thing that I saw. Is like, man, they missed that dude's presence in the middle.
Well, they're missing some other key components on defense as well, and again, it's great that you can rush the passer, okay, but when the running back has the football, it's an issue, and the fact that the Patriots stay balanced, and we talk about all the time, carries mean as much as yards do when it comes to the running game. New England executed, and like I said, they could have very easily hung their head after that, that late turnover, and all of a sudden they relinquished the lead because they basically controlled the game for mostly 3 quarters. But kudos to Belichick and kudos to the staff and the players and Mac Jones, who was had an excellent day as far as completing passes and so on. And it's funny. That's the beauty of this league. You got it all figured out, and then you watch powerhouses, the quote unquote supposed powerhouses of the league.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo, Miami, Detroit, San Francisco, all bite the dust in 1 week.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? All the big guys, all the big guns. Yeah, they all lost.
Yeah, and listen, I know Miami, Philadelphia was a showdown. Detroit, Baltimore was the showdown. San Francisco has gone from imposing to confusing in the span of 7 weeks.
Yeah. And to me, I think that gets back to one of the topics that I started with today. I know that the NFL poobahs want Parity, and a lot of fans look at it as Parody,
right.
Parity and parity. But at the same time, I think this is what the teams want. Otherwise, they would legislate otherwise within the NFL rule book, would they not?
Well, listen, the salary cap changed everything. Free agency changed a lot, and the salary cap changed even more.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back to the mid '90s. Free agency started in '93. The cap kicked in '94. We were in the midst of the Dallas dynasty of the '90s, where they won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. And as I like to remind people, the '92 team, there was no free agency, smattering at the end of the year. '93 it kicked in. '94 there was the cap. '95 they still had a lot of players. '93 the Cowboys didn't lose that many players to free agency. They wanted to come back and repeat. Then they started losing people, and it kind of swung, John. The tide kind of swung when the Broncos won those back-to-back Super Bowls. We started seeing franchises that had never had any kind of Super Bowl success all of a sudden get to the big game and win it. And that included the Patriots,
mm-hmm.
who had been to a couple Super Bowls and then all of a sudden did what they did. But, we saw the Saints. We saw the Cardinals in the Super Bowl. We saw Seattle in back-to-back Super Bowls. Like I said, franchises, free agency changed everything. And the cap changed even more. And that's why what New England did for 20 years and what the Chiefs are currently doing, we've got to applaud more than anything else, because they've been able to find a way to buck the system where everybody else is just kind of floating in mediocrity, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. How does a team – I ask this question of people and I get different answers. I'd be curious as to yours. How does a team pull itself up out of mediocrity? And do they have to get that lucky bolt of lightning, strike them like the Patriots getting, Tom Brady with a 199th pick, and then, as we know, the world changed thereafter? Or is there more of a calculated effort for a team to pull itself up out of the morass of mediocrity? I think that's a good phrase, and actually turn themselves into a bona fide Super Bowl contender.
I think what you have to have is a plan more than anything else. Now, it's funny you should bring that up, okay? Now, I've read this. I can't say I researched it, okay? I saw it online today, and I'll just throw out baseball. Correct me if I'm wrong. Both the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks 2 years ago lost over 100 games.
They did. That's true.
and now they're in the World Series.
I saw another number this week that you'll love too. Last time we had two teams who started the year at 50-1 odds or better to reach the World Series. The Rangers were 50-1, and I think the Diamondbacks were like 125-1, something like that. Okay, the last time we had two teams like that make the series was 32 years ago.
Wow,
it's a long time.
I was hoping you didn't say 1919 because I remember putting money down on the White Sox.
And you've never forgiven Chula Joe since.
Yeah, remember that? You remember that movie 8 Men Out?
Yeah.
I was the ninth. Okay. So, but no, you have to have a plan. This is going to sound like an odd example because he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. But when Brian Flores left New England and went to Miami, they had a plan to change the culture. Everybody accused them of, they're tanking.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember that season, remember where they got annihilated by the Ravens and then shut out by the Patriots.
Yeah.
I think they give up like 102 points in their first two games.
Something like that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then by the end of the year, Ryan Fitzpatrick came into Foxborough with the Dolphins and beat them, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they weren't tanking. They were trying to change things.
Yeah.
After some really, really bad years. But I think the tendency for teams is to not have a plan and grab a box of Band-Aids and let's spend some money and do this and that and this and that and this and that and change the roster. A team that has fallen into that rut big time with a slew of changes every year is the Raiders. And that's why the Raiders haven't won a playoff. The Raiders haven't won the playoff game since the only year that Tom Brady was the full-time starter in New England. That's 2002.
Wow.
They haven't won a play. They've only.
That's right. That's right. That was the year they got to the Super Bowl, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The last playoff game they won was they beat the Titans in the AFC
Championship. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So you see other teams, and you wonder why Green Bay does what it does in terms of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder why Pittsburgh does what it does in terms of its front office, even though they made a change this year, and the head, 3 different head coaches in 50-something years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they don't win it, but they're at least in the ballpark, and maybe one day they will win it again. Stability is huge. Andy Reid has now been part of. In fact, Andy Reid reminds me. This is going to be a weird analogy. Kind of reminds me of Adam Vinatieri, who was part of the Patriots dynasty, and then wound up spending more years in Indianapolis than he did in New England.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because Andy Reid is now in his 11th year as the head coach of the Chiefs after spending more than 10 years in Philadelphia.
Crazy.
And Philadelphia got to 1 Super Bowl that didn't happen. Andy Reid's now gotten to 3 and won a couple of titles. Stability, okay? There's that lack of stability and that certainly not lack of impatience is what has hurt a lot of teams as they – for instance, more recently, the Buccaneers and the Rams, who look like they were now 1-year fixes.
Yep.
Now, the Rams did it for a couple of years, and the Buccaneers certainly did it.
Mm-hmm.
But once Brady left,
back to being the Bucs.
Yeah, they won the division last year, and they were 8-9.
Yeah.
The Rams went from Super Bowl champion to setting a record for the most losses ever
by a Super Bowl champ.
Super Bowl champion.
Right. Exactly. Back to being the Bucs and the Rams.
Right. So, they got their titles, and for some people that's good, but you don't know what you're getting. The Rams lost last week. They're now 3-4. Last year they were 5-12. Okay, so what's that? 8 and 16 in their last. Was it 7? Was it 3? They carried. Listen to me, do this. 8 and
carry the cipher.
Yeah. 8 and 16. They played 24 games. 17-7. They lost 2/3 of their games since winning the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Damn abacus gets in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, carry the 4.
Yeah. Oh, I amuse myself way too often
I'm
here.
better off when I'm making 7-Eleven jokes. That's
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, the aforementioned Bucks and Bills, by the way, kind of lead off our play this week. They got the Thursday night game at Buffalo, and clearly it's an opportunity for both teams, but maybe for the Bills to reassert themselves as a potential contender, within the AFC, I would think, right?
Well, you would think so. And, we know how Buffalo is, certainly at home. I mean, obviously the 3 games now, I think technically the loss at Jacksonville, I think they were the home team. The loss in London to Jacksonville, I should say.
Yeah.
The other 2 losses are divisional. And it's, it's kind of a rare meeting between 2 of the quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round in 2018, Baker Mayfield, number 1, and Josh Allen, number 7.
Yeah.
What is extremely rare, and I never went back and looked, but I'm pretty certain I can't ever remember a week where we've had 10 interconference games. I might be wrong, but 10 of the 16 games, so we have no buys this week. 10 of the games are interconference games, starting with Thursday night and ending with the Raiders-Lions game on Monday night.
And
So
if I'm not mistaken, Russell, I counted up a little bit just haphazardly today. The AFC's got the lead again in the clubhouse, right?
Yeah, 20 to. They lost. It's funny. The first 2 weeks they were 0-6. Since then they're 20-7.
Wow.
And I don't know what that means. And a lot of times, just so people know, a lot of times, if you win the season series, it doesn't necessarily translate into the Super Bowl.
No.
The conference team.
You don't get home court advantage.
Yeah, it just doesn't do anything until there's no real trend there, is what I should be saying.
Right.
But this will be interesting because the Bucs are certainly flawed. Their offense has really struggled the last couple outings and so on. Defensively, they're pretty solid. The one thing the Bucs don't do, it's funny, offensively their issue has been moving the ball. Mm-hmm. It's not like they've made a slew of mistakes. Okay? They're one of the better teams in terms of turnover margin and just not turning over the ball, period.
Yep.
They just haven't been able to move the ball. Now, and last week was a perfect example. They had a couple opportunities to rally and beat the Falcons, and unfortunately for them, their defense gave up one huge pass play to Kyle Pitts late in the game, and Atlanta wound up beating them in Tampa and so on. The Bills, they got to figure a way to stop the run. And we know the thing about the Bills. The Bills are so capable of just about blowing anyone out at any one time. But, they're like an old record player. Are we going to see the Bills at 78 speed or 33 in the third?
Whoa, wait a second. Say that again?
Are we going to see the Bills at 78 speed?
Or at 33 in the third?
Mm-hmm. Or in 33 in the third.
Right, okay, yeah. For those that are uninitiated to that terminology, that's the speed that, vinyl records used to play it on the turntable. Right? Okay, gotcha.
Right. In fact, after I'm done, I got to go change my Mantovani album. So.
I used to love playing the 33s. 45s too. But yeah, absolutely.
My mother and father and so on. Listen, when your last name was DePasquale, like my mother's was.
Yeah.
Okay. There was going to be a Mantovani album in the house. Okay.
Yeah.
Along with, of course, Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Yeah, they got to have some Diana Ross. All right. So the Jets, obviously the Dolphins and the Patriots, we'll get to them last year, but the Jets are also playing on the road at the Giants. The Jets are the dark horse now. They're 3-3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I never thought this, but I mean, if they beat the Giants, Bills lose, Patriots win. Oh my gosh! You're talking about I'll have the toss-up question for 200, Alex, because frankly, you don't know what's going to happen in the AFC East, but it could be that close amongst all of the teams.
As Bill Murray said in Ghostbusters, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Yeah, mass hysteria. Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Especially if the Patriots can pull this off, and it's funny about Miami last year, and a lot of this had to do with injury. Okay, and good for the Dolphins this year because after they lost their first game to Buffalo, they did rebound and win the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But do you remember the Dolphins last year? They were 3-0, and then they were 3-3,
mm-hmm.
and then they were 8-3, and then they were 8-8.
Mm-hmm.
So they won 3, lost 3, won 5, lost 5, and then beat the Jets in that snoozer at the end, and then lost the playoff game.
Right.
This year they're 5-2. Now they really got their helmets handed to them in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I heard a lot of squawking about referees, and the Eagles had no penalties, and the Dolphins had 10. John, I don't know about you. When you run for -7 yards in the first half, call me crazy, but I think you might be getting dominated at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, that was not pretty, and I know they've had, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. They have had some problems recently in their offensive line, and they just lost ex-Patriot Isaiah Wynn to the IR. So their troubles on the offensive line are very Patriot-like, at least how it was around here just a few short weeks ago. And one of the real intrigues of the game on Sunday is if the Patriots' defensive front is in position to be able to take advantage.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, when they played each other earlier this year, New England hung around, to say the least. And New England's biggest problem in that first meeting was actually stopping the Patriots' running game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they really beat them with the ground attack. It wasn't so much, listen, Tyreek Hill does something to everybody. Let's not ignore that, okay? But that was really the difference in the game. But you remember the Patriots' first 2 games against Philadelphia and Miami were kind of the same. They fell behind early and hung around, but just couldn't make that final push at the end and make the big play, which is completely opposite of what happened against Buffalo last week.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
They're trailing, and this time they pull it off. And maybe they gain a little confidence in doing that. So I'll be curious to see how Miami physically and emotionally bounces back from this game. I know they were disappointed, obviously, to lose at Buffalo and the way they lost at Buffalo. The Philadelphia game, to me, was a little different. Again, it's not as important as the Buffalo game, but it was the way they kind of got pushed. I mean, this was a team that's rolling up yards. They had 244 total yards against Philadelphia. Okay, they barely even tried to run the football. And listen, Philly with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and already, Brandon Gray, I mean, they're loaded on the defensive front again. I don't have to remind Patriots fans what a big difference that was 60 years ago when those two teams played in the Super Bowl.
Sure.
That's Howie Roseman's formula. And by the way, a team that's been shaky against the pass just went out and got one of the best ball hawks in the league in Kevin Byard.
Yeah, right. Hey, there are just a couple of other games, though, that I find, intriguing, although I would have to say that most of them are kind of meh for even interconference games. But one of them has to be Bengals at the 49ers, because the Bengals, everybody thought would be good, and they've struggled out of the gate. The 49ers, everybody thought they'd be good, and I was frankly surprised they got beat by Minnesota.
I think it was the way they got beat by Minnesota. And Minnesota defensively, we know, has been iffy for the last couple of years. Daniel Hunter is one of the best pass rushers in the league, but they don't stop a lot of people. I think Kirk Cousins kind of gets a bad rap, but he threw an early interception, and then he was almost flawless.
Yeah.
I want to say San Francisco gave up 459 total yards.
Yeah, that's
you can't blame that on Brock Purdy.
Right.
I know he threw some interceptions, and I think they had another turnover as well. Okay, but it was that. Think about what San Francisco looked like the first 5 weeks of the season, John.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind on Monday night, I don't think they stacked Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm. Didn't get to him at all. No, I don't think so.
378 yards against that defense.
Yeah, that was amazing to me.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Again, how does a team handle losing after not losing for a while. Remember, San Francisco won 15 straight regular season games. If you include the playoff loss at Philly, they were 17-1 in their previous 18 games. Okay, because remember they beat Seattle and Dallas in the playoffs last year before the NFC title game.
Yep.
So this was a team that got used to winning, and now all of a sudden this, and could the Bengals have won 2 in a row? The Niners have lost 2 in a row. Are we seeing like ships passing in the night here? By the way, for the Bengals, the good news is they have won 2 in a row. You know who else has won 2 in a row? The Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns. The whole division is riding a 2-game winning streak.
Yeah, that whole division is playing like, I know that everybody's talking about the NFC East and even the AFC East as being the best division. I would beg to differ at this stage of the game.
Well, Baltimore is really fascinating. First off, they've given up 6 offensive touchdowns this year in 7 games. They've given up 6 points in the first quarter, outscored the opposition 55-6.
Wow.
And Lamar Jackson.
See what good starts will do for you?
Don't get me wrong. He has been pretty sharp throwing the football, okay? Would it surprise you to know that Lamar Jackson has already turned over the ball 8 times in 7 games?
That's totally been hidden by their overall success.
Yes. Because I think they've been able to overcome that. I think in past years when he has gotten into those turnover ruts, they've had their issue. Now, a bunch of those came in the loss to the Steelers. I understand that. But you would have never thought that last week. They had 5 touchdown drives. It was like watching Michigan against Michigan State, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Long touchdown drives against what we thought was a pretty good Detroit defense. But yes, I want to say right off the top of my head that Lamar has fumbled 8 times and lost 5 of them.
Wow.
And I think he has 3 interceptions.
It's crazy. And yet
somewhere in that regard. So 8 turnovers in 7 games by the quarterback, and yet, because of their defense, because of their pass rush, they have been able to overcome mistakes that I would say in the last 3 or 4 years they weren't able to overcome.
Yeah, I know. That's a great story within the story as far as the Ravens are concerned, and about the success that the Ravens are having thus far. Hey, one more I wanted to ask you about quickly, Russell, is the Monday night game, because I was really disappointed in Detroit last week, and I'm kind of figuring out if my new favorite team other than New England is closer to what we saw last week, or are they closer to what we saw in the previous 5 weeks or 6 weeks before that? They're home against the Raiders, which means they at least have a chance to get well again on Monday night. But what the hell happened to Detroit?
Oh, I guess people who told you they were good, they were lying.
Oh, but okay.
Yeah, no, actually, that crash, that was the Lions last week. It was, what was interesting was, last year, you'll remember the Lions won 8 of their last 10 games.
Yeah.
And their defense looked like it was making a turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I had just written, it has nothing to do with me, but I had just written a piece about give the Lions defense some credit. Well, I wrote that piece a couple days before they went to Carolina. And Carolina laid 320 yards rushing on them late in the year.
Yeah.
That, in essence, is probably the game that cost them the playoff berth last year. They got destroyed by the Panthers. They gave up over 500 yards of total offense. That's the same thing that happened to them. I think it was 522 by the Ravens on Sunday. I mean, that was, they didn't lay an egg. That was a frittata.
Mm-hmm. You could have bet me any amount of money that we would not get the word frittata into the show today.
Well, I'm going to let you think about that.
Oh, God. I'm going to let you think about that one.
We're almost done, right?
Yeah, thank God. It's going. We're going to be Humpty Dumpty before too long. Oh, you the man. You the man. As always. Always good to talk football with you, my friend.
Oh, isn't it fun?
Yes, it is. This is great. This is great. I could sit here and I could talk just football forever, and I realize there is a little bit of a time restraint here, but still, it's good conversation. I could I could dance around this all day. It beats the hell out of working. I'll tell you that.
Well, I'll tell you. Here's why I say that, and I'm not going to get in my soapbox. This is what sports talk is. Okay.
Well, it should be. It should be.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen. There's sports scream. There's sports yell.
Sports yell.
There's sports anger. Okay? When you and I get together,
sports talk.
We talk about the game.
Yeah.
Okay?
But it takes a couple of old fogies to teach the new kids how to do it.
Well, the new kids are all too busy, unfortunately, trying to shout over each other.
That's also true. True. So that's fine. If you like shouting, that's great. Go for it. But if you don't, well, you got an alternative.
Well, I got some of these guys out here don't make me want to shout.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Boy, that's also true. I heard a little bit of that earlier today myself. Thank you, my friend. What's that?
It's funny because you can hear them and you don't even have the volume up.
Oh, no, absolutely. That's 100% true. 100% true. Talk to you next week, my friend. See you then.
You got it.
All right. Russell Baxter. The one and only @Bax Football Guru on X. He's one of those guys that's forgotten more football than I know, but it's always good to talk with them. Daniel's in Pennsylvania. I'm going to give Daniel the last word of the program today. Hey, Daniel, you're in the playbook.
Hey there. I'm calling because, honestly, I was really shocked about the Saints' incredible thrashing of the Patriots.
Yeah.
I didn't think that it was going to happen in that way. Patriots are my favorite team. And I guess I just had a question.
Shoot.
Do you like 4 dicks in your mouth or just 3?
Really?
Yeah.
Really? What are you, a jerk? That was totally uncalled for, right? That's the first time I think that's happened in 22 years. That must be one of those young guys that, clearly has his head up his ass, right? No kidding. And we don't have a dump button for that thing, do we?
Nope. Podcast, not radio.
I know, exactly. Oh, God. Oh, and he waited how long to be able to say that? That shows, a good level of intelligence, I think, right there. Or maybe lack thereof. Okay, fair enough. We'll earmark that guy for next time, all right? Unless he's going to call in with another name and from, some other place like hell. I don't know, maybe. One way or the other. Hey, thanks to – no sweat off my nose. I've been accused of a lot worse, trust me. Thanks to our guest today. We had Chad Graff on from The Athletic, Armando Salguero from Outkick, covering the Miami Dolphins, amongst other items. Obviously, the one and only Evan Lazar, Russell Baxter, heading around. God, is this already week? Oh, my God, 8? We're damn near halfway through the season. Past this week, we are halfway through the season, which is stunning for me to even realize. Stunning. So, there's a little part of me that wants to think, it's not over yet. Just a little part of me, right? But at the same time, it's kind of like, man, let's be real about this thing. What we've seen and what we just saw are two completely different things. Is it growth? Is it a turnaround? Is it, for the better, for the worse? I don't know. It just seemed like there was a confluence of things this last week that pointed toward the Patriots playing well. I mentioned to Miss Robin in the booth before the game on Sunday, I said, you know what? I actually have a pretty strange feeling about this one. And she says, I do too. I think the Patriots win today. I'm like, well, I don't know if I go that far, but I think it'll be a good game. And sure enough, it turned out to be the best game. It was one of the most entertaining games we've seen in a long time. Long time. Fortunate that New England won the game. But I had that good feeling. And I'd be hard-pressed to think differently from thinking that the Patriots might have a bit of a run in here. Or at least have one within them. I don't know what that translates to. But the schedule is certainly going to translate into their favor. So if that's the case, then Okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Maybe I better stop before I get going because then I'll get accused of being a homer. Hey, every once in a while you wave the pom-poms, but we try to do it somewhat intelligently, at least on this program. And look, if the Patriots can find a way to win in South Florida, which again, as we dictated earlier in the show, has been difficult to do. They've lost 8 of the last 10 that they've played in Miami. Coming into this one. So, but if you figure out a way to turn that around and get a win, you're at 3-5 and you get an opportunity to play your way right back into this thing. But I think it has to start with this weekend. Does that mean you slam the door shut on the season if they lose? No, I think most everybody expects them to lose, to be honest with you. And they might. Okay. I would expect them to be a favorite in this thing anyway, to be honest with you. What's the latest spread on this game? Dolphins are a 10-point favorite? Yeah, about 10 right now is the last spread that I saw in the game. I think the Patriots make it a game. I don't know if they win it with a 10-point, being a 10-point road dog, but I think there's an opportunity that, if they make this a game and make it a one-possession game and not shoot themselves in the foot, that, they could cause Miami some trouble. And they do know Miami, and I would be surprised if the Patriots came in and played them the same way that they did back at the second week of September. So, at any rate, it's all on the table for Sunday in a 1 o'clock kickoff Eastern time in South Florida. Thanks to our guest. Thanks to Marine. We'll go St. Pat's time, St. Pat's channel, right here on Patriots.com radio next Wednesday, and we'll see. But at least they're giving us something positive to talk about, right? Talk to you next week.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.